This is he.
Raymond, why don't you pass the time by playing a little solitaire?
Well then, comrade.
May I present the famous Raymond Shaw?
His brain has not only been washed, as they say, it has been dry cleaned.
Raymond Shaw is the bravest, kindest,
Kindest,
most wonderful human
bravest, warmest, most
Raymond
wonderful
Shaw
human
is the
being.
kindest, bravest, warmest, most wonderful human being I've ever known in my life.
It's time for my American operator to give me the plan.
Why don't you pass the time by playing a little solitaire?
It's a terrible thing to hate your mother.
I wanted a killer from a world filled with killers, and they chose you.
Hello, I'm film historian Tony Maeda.
And I'm Brad Shreve, who's just a guy who likes movies.
We discuss movies and television from Hollywood's golden age. We go behind the scenes and share our opinions, too.
And of course, being the average guy, my opinions are the ones that matter.
As does your self-delusion. Welcome to Going Hollywood.
Tony, it's good to see you. We haven't talked much over the past couple of weeks.
No, I know. Wow, it's good to be back in the U.S. Dear listener, I was in London for a week, an amazing time. Saw some great theater, and just had a wonderful time. I had a great time, but it's good to be back. But yeah, I got to tell you, Brad, I'm still on London time. My body will not adjust to L.A. time. You know, not that big a deal. So now I get up. Instead of getting up at 4:30, I get up at 2:30. But by noon, I'm a mess. Anyway, it's good to be back. It's good to be back and good to see you. Thanks. I wanted to tell you too, Brad. So when I was in London, I got something for you.
You know, that doesn't surprise me. Listener, I got to tell you, Tony Maeda is the kindest, bravest, warmest, most wonderful human being I've ever known in my life.
Where have I've heard that before? Where have I heard that? But anyway, so I walked, I was doing a little shopping, sweetie. I was doing a little shopping, and I walked into one of my favorite bookstores on Piccadilly, and right in front of me was a first edition copy of The Manchurian Candidate. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
What serendipity. So I have something for you, and I meant to send it, but you know what? I'll send it right now. Okay, I'm going to send it. Let me get my phone. I'm sending it right now.
The first edition now.
There, you should have it. You should have it.
What the fuck is this?
Did you get it?
Yes. It's a picture.
Yeah,
Are you showing me what you brought back?
No, it's a picture of the first edition of The Manchurian Candidate. It was almost 500 quid. I ain't got that kind of dosh. What do you think?
Listener, I was wrong about what I said. I want to tell you now, it's not that Tony Maeda is hard to like. He's impossible to like.
500 quid on your ass. Come on. But anyway, it's a great way of saying our final film for Mother's May, featuring, as we've been vamping the entire month, the biggest mother, I think, of them all in cinematic history, Angela Lansbury in The Manchurian Candidate. And listener, this one is Brad's baby.
We don't give spoiler alerts, but this is one, if you have not seen it, spoiler alerts. Because we're going to give it all away. And you always ask me why I chose a particular film. And thank you again for allowing me a film now and again. And actually, I think next week's is mine too.
I'll let you choose one finally. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
The reason I chose this one is I remember Angela Lansbury being a mother. The mothers of all mothers.
The mother of all mothers.
I remembered, beyond that, I remembered almost nothing. Except for the fact I loved this film. But it was so long ago, I forgot everything. And I remembered loving it. And when I watched it again, I'm like, wow, I know why.
It's, watching it again. God, she is. She's, as you said in one of our last episodes, a very loving mother in the most literal sense. And I don't know if we're going to go too much into the differences between the book and the film, but in the book, I mean, she's literally a loving mother, which is one of the freakiest things about the book and the film. But it's so startling. It's so prescient. It's so many things. It's a lot. Ironically, it's a lot like Network. And ironically, John Frankenheimer used to work for Sidney Lumet in television as an assistant director. Lumet and Frankenheimer, very, very similar in their attitudes. There's even narration in this film, as there's narration in Network.
And, it's funny to me because Angela Lansbury is the only actor in this film that was nominated for an Academy Award.
Right.
She was nominated for Best Actress in a Supporting Role.
Correct.
And to me, it was not a supporting role.
No,
now I didn't see who she would have been up against in the Best Actress role, but I know Best Supporting Actress, she lost to Patty Duke in A Miracle Worker, which is no surprise.
It's 62. It's the year of The Miracle Worker. So and we talked about the Oscars of 62/63 in our Baby Jane episode, because she was up against, if she would have been nominated for actress, she would be up against Bette Davis, Geraldine Page, Anne Bancroft, obviously, Lee Remick. So but she wasn't. She was put in the Best Supporting Actress, and she lost to Patty Duke.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna take an Oscar away. Oh, and Geraldine Page, of course, for Best Actress.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna take an Oscar away from Patty Duke in The Miracle Worker. But
no.
Jesus, what a performance!
Jessica Fletcher, she was not.
Oh my God! And I want to talk more about Angela Lansbury and her approach to this character later on, but there are a couple myths if you allow me to, I want to put to rest.
Well, I will allow you, and I think I know one of them that you're going to put to rest, but I did want to let people know, to give them a frame of reference in this.
Yes, please.
The Cuban Missile Crisis, which for you youngins out there was when Kennedy blockaded Cuba to prevent the Russians from bringing more missiles into Cuba, which today with intercontinental ballistic missiles is kind of absurd, but to have missiles there in Cuba was a big deal back then. That Cuban missile crisis lasted from October 16th to October 28th, 1962.
Right.
In this movie came out in October 24th. So it was right in the height of where a lot of people thought it was going to be the end of the world.
No, absolutely. Can you imagine this? This film was released on October 24th. So
yes,
right smack dab in the middle of the Cuban Missile Crisis, this film was released. That's astounding to me. But a couple of myths, one I want to dispel and one I want to confirm. Mm-hmm. The one I'd like to dispel is that, contrary to legend, this film was not pulled from release after the Kennedy assassination.
That was the one I knew that you were going to comment on.
First of all, this film was released in October of 1962, and the assassination of John F. Kennedy was November of 1963. So it was over a year later that the Kennedy assassination happened. So this film had pretty much played.
Which was about the time the film was pulled from the theaters, which...
But it wasn't pulled. There are ads. There are verifiable ads, newspaper ads, that it still showed. And in fact, it was shown on television in 1965.
Exactly, which was normal at that time.
It wasn't pulled because of the Kennedy assassination. It might have had an effect, but it had been in release for over a year. So, give it a break. The second myth I want to confirm, and something that always, always, always blows my mind. Before I say it, though, with Brad, I think we've gotten to the point in our podcast where I think we need to just inaugurate a Lucy moment. Because in every single episode, look, when you have me as a co-host, it just comes with the territory. We're going to have a Lucy reference. But I think we just need to inaugurate an official Lucy moment. We can have we can do a little music like da 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 da, and then I can say Lucy moment. So let's do that right now. Da 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 da. Lucy moment.
Lucy moment.
Lucy moment. It is
our
true.
current tagline right now is movies and television from the golden age to today. I think we need to change it to Going Hollywood, movies and television that usually feature Lucille Ball from the golden age to today, or at least mentioned some way.
Movies, television, and Lucy. But okay. Unlike usually when I bring up Lucy, this is totally appropriate. Okay. Because it is true that Frank Sinatra's first choice to play Mrs. Iselin, Angela Lansbury, the mother from hell, was indeed Lucille Ball. Now, from the very first time I heard this, I was like, is this Hollywood lore? How far did this go? Mm-hmm. So I consulted one of my dear friends and friend of the pod, Thomas J. Watson, who we had on last season for a Lucy episode, who knew Lucille Ball, who worked with Lucille Ball, who I worked with on the Lucy Show DVDs. And he confirmed that, yes, Frank Sinatra did speak to Lucille about playing the role of Mrs. Iselin. However, Lucy said she thought about it and she really didn't want to accept it because it would destroy her General Foods image, which
I can see that.
Definitely would have. And, just for context, Lucy was at a crossroads here. I Love Lucy had ended and, she was just beginning The Lucy Show. The Lucy Show premiered in October of the same year. This movie was October 24th. Lucy Show premiered on October 1st. So when this happened, she was in preparation for The Lucy Show. So she really couldn't leave, and Desilu needed her. She needed the show, and they needed her to do the show. So she really couldn't leave the show. She couldn't. So she really couldn't do it, besides which it's a moot point because Frankenheimer wanted Angela Lansbury from the beginning. And he said that to Frank. He said, he showed Frank, he had just worked with Lansbury on All Fall Down, the film which he starred opposite Warren Beatty, played Warren Beatty's mother again. And Sinatra was convinced. But I just think, oh my God, it would have been, first of all, the history of Hollywood would have changed. Lucille Ball played this incestuous, murderous mother. Secondly, it would have been one of those, like a startling, frightening, incredible casting choice. And I think one of the great what-ifs of Hollywood, right up there with Doris Day as Mrs. Robinson in The Graduate. It would have been mind-blowing. And Lucy could have done it. Lucy was an actress. She played all kinds of various characters when she was in her movie career. So I just want to say that, and that's the end of our Lucy moment for now. For this episode. Da 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 da. Okay.
You did that too soon because I was only going to comment. I've seen Lucy play Cold Hearted, and she would have been good in it, but I can't imagine. Once the movie's out, you can't imagine anybody else in the role, and I sure could not imagine anyone but Angela Lansbury.
Well, Lansbury is so brilliant.
Oh my God, yes.
I think that Lucy would have been brilliant. As I said, I think it would have been a startling, frightening choice, and I think the history of Hollywood would have changed completely after this, because she could never have gone back to Lucy Carmichael after playing this part.
No, that would have been very, very difficult. Let me do the rundown of this film.
Yes, I'm done. You go.
Okay, because I want to get to the starring roles here. Now, The Manchurian Candidate is a 1962 political thriller suspense novel, and it was based on the best-selling novel by Richard Cohen, which came out in 1959. Now, this was directed by John Frankenheimer. It was written by Richard Condon. I don't know if he really had much to do with the screenplay or if they just put his name with that. Also written by John Frankenheimer and somebody that we've heard from time to time, George Axelrod.
Yes. We talked about Axelrod.
Yes. Now, it starred primarily Frank Sinatra, who I've got to say, I normally am not a fan of Frank Sinatra, and he was great in this role. I watch him and I'm like, wow, he's marvelous. Also, I had Laurence Harvey, who played Raymond Shaw, which was Angela Lansbury's son, despite the fact that he was only 3 years younger than she was. And we'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah.
And then we had Dame Angela Lansbury, and she really had fourth or fifth in the line of the credits.
After Janet Leigh.
Yes, after Janet Leigh, which is very bizarre, because we'll talk about her too. But I'm going to focus on Angela Lansbury today, and I think obviously you are going to. One, because it's Mother's May.
Yes.
And number two, she is really the standout, beyond a doubt.
Oh.
So Dame Angela Lansbury played Mrs. Eleanor Shaw Iselin. And then we have Janet Leigh, who played Eugene Rose Cheney, which she only had one purpose in this film that I know of, and she could have been eliminated. James Gregory, who, if you don't know him, you would know him by face because he's been around forever.
Do you remember who he played on Barney Miller?
Oh, he was the detective.
Yes.
Yes, he was the hardcore detective.
Detective Luger on Barney Miller, probably his other claim to fame. Yeah.
Yep. And then we had James Gregory, who played Senator John Iselin, as I said, and Henry Silva, who was Chunjin. And then two other names I want to give because you will know them. Or first of all, the very handsome James Edwards played Corporal Alan Melville, and he came on. I'm like, wow, he's handsome. I didn't recognize him at first. And I wish he had a bigger role. I'm guessing that role had a bigger role in the book. And then, because I always love him in anything, even though he's almost the same character in every film, John MacGyver was Senator Thomas Jordan.
John MacGyver. Oh.
Yeah, I never get tired of seeing John MacGyver.
There's a lot of Breakfast at Tiffany's here. Well, it was 2 years after Tiffany's. You have George Axelrod. And actually, this is interesting. Frankenheimer was supposed to direct Breakfast at Tiffany's. And Axelrod was writing it, and he left after 3 months, and that's how we got Blake Edwards. But I thought that was interesting. Very interesting.
I brought up Angela's age because when we did, I can't remember the film.
Death on the Nile.
No, we talked about Ellen Corby.
Oh, I Remember Mama.
Yes, you talked about Ellen Corby, and you mentioned that she was born 40 and stayed 40 for quite some time.
Yeah.
That was Angela Lansbury. Mm-hmm. She, in fact, I heard once, I couldn't find a break in her filmography or stage, but I did hear once that she left acting for a brief time because she was tired of playing matronly roles. So I don't know if that's true or not, but she looks like she could be his mother in this film.
Yeah.
And she's only 36 years old, and he was 33.
She's 3 years older than Laurence Harvey.
Yeah.
And she's about 11 years older than Warren Beatty, and she just had played Warren Beatty's mother. So yes, born at 45, stayed 45. So yeah, I mean, always older. You know, she made her film debut in Gaslight at age 19. Mm-hmm. Got her first Academy Award nomination, and then got an Academy Award nomination for The Picture of Dorian Gray right after that. And then this Academy Award nomination. And as I said, I don't want to take an Academy Award away from Patty Duke because I love Patty Duke. But this performance, the bravery of this performance astounds me every time I see it.
This could have been a career killer.
It very well could have been a career killer. And it's amazing. I wonder if people, when they were watching Murder, She Wrote, if they realized about this film. Obviously they did. When this film was re-released in 1988, it played the New York Film Festival in 87, and UA reacquired the rights and re-released it. And it just blew up all over again, probably bigger than its original release, because we had hindsight. We could see what this film was portending and how really, really, unfortunately, true it is.
Well, I also keep hearing about how the movie did not do as well as they hoped in the theater, and I think a lot of it had to do with the timing.
Oh, yeah, I think so, too.
Who in the middle of the Cuban Missile Crisis wants to watch a political thriller?
No, it's absolutely true. It grossed more on its re-release. I mean, it was also 1988, but it originally made $3.3 million on a budget of $2.2 million, almost half of which was Frank Sinatra's salary. Okay, we're just going to say that. But Frank Sinatra was also the reason it got made. It's very important to point that out. Frank Sinatra was a major film star in 1962. So he could get anything made with his name on it. And he got this made. He actually acquired the rights from it and then sold them again when it was re-released. But I want to ask you, if you know, so since we're talking about this film, what exactly is a Manchurian Candidate?
Well, that term seemed to have come from a particular book, and it's used all the time these days, but there was a book that came out. It happened to be called The Manchurian Candidate.
Right.
That it was based on. And what a Manchurian Candidate is, and it's been done many times since then, including on one of my favorite TV series, Battlestar Galactica, the newest one, is a person is a puppet, but they don't know that they're a puppet. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, like a politician used it as a puppet by an enemy power.
Yes.
So that's what a Manchurian Candidate is. And in this film, our Manchurian Candidate is Laurence Harvey as Raymond Shaw,
who was an easy man to manipulate because he was from a powerful family, and was also a very broken man who had been under his mother's control for some time. So he's actually pretty easy to manipulate. Do
we want to give a little synopsis of what the Manchurian Candidate's about, just for people?
Sure, I think that's probably a good idea to jog people's memory. So near the end of the Korean War in 1952, there's a platoon of U.S. soldiers, and they are kidnapped by communists. I think it was a collaboration between the Chinese and the Russian Communist Party.
Mm-hmm.
And they are brainwashed. Now, I'm going to pull away for a minute. There's two things that I got wrong that I remembered in this film that I got wrong. One, the brainwashing wasn't revealed until the end. And the other was, I thought there was a lot more shown in the incestuous relationship. Those were the two things that I only really remembered. And I didn't even really remember how the brainwashing happened. I just remembered that there was a guy undercover. So when it started with this brainwashing thing, I'm like, they're giving away the whole movie here. And I was really disappointed. I'm like, there's not going to be anything interesting now. Boy, I was wrong.
Oh,
so I'm really glad I remembered nothing. So anyway, they are captured by the communists and they're brainwashed. Now, after the war, the platoon is returned home and Sergeant Raymond Shaw is given a Congressional Medal of Honor for a incident in the war that didn't even happen.
Mm-hmm.
But they were all brainwashed to believe it was. So he gets all this accommodation. He's a hero. But then Captain Bennett Marco, Frank Sinatra, he is plagued by strange nightmares, and he's not the only one. But he is plagued by these nightmares, and he keeps remembering bits and pieces of what they went through. And I got to tell you, I normally hate dream sequences because I think it's usually lazy writing.
Mm-hmm.
These were wonderful.
Well, this is a brilliant dream sequence.
Yes.
A 360-degree shot, which tells you it starts from a subjective viewpoint, i.e. the dream, and as the camera goes around 360 degrees, it turns around to an objective viewpoint of what is actually happening. That's one of the brilliance of Frankenheimer.
To have a speech going on and have it change from an Asian man to a white woman to a black woman back to an Asian. I mean, it's just, and it was so seamless, and you understood what was going on, and you're like, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty astounding.
It really was. So Sinatra figures out what's going on, and he doesn't know all the details, but he knows something's up, and he knows that Shaw has been hypnotized and is under control.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has to try and stop a plot that he really doesn't know what the plot is.
Right. No, it's pretty amazing. I think we have to point out here that the Manchurian Candidate was made, there was still a blacklist when the Manchurian Candidate was made. And it was really the first film about McCarthy, because Senator Iselin is a stand-in for Joseph McCarthy.
Really? I didn't notice that.
You didn't notice that. And the reason Laurence Harvey has been brainwashed is because he was brainwashed by the communists who want to insert Senator Iselin as the vice president and eventually the president of the United States. And it just so happens that the head of the Communist Party in the United States turns out to be his mother. Angela Lansbury is the head of the Communist Party, and they have brainwashed her son to become an assassin so that her husband, Senator Iselin, can then be installed as vice president, then president of the United States. It's an astounding plot.
And that's something I couldn't figure out for the longest time is, was she a communist or was she just power hungry? Either way would have worked.
No, she was the head of the Communist Party.
Yeah, I know. But initially I couldn't figure that out.
It's astounding. It's astounding. You know, and the thing about Lansbury is that you think when you first meet Lansbury in this film, she's just this obnoxious, overbearing mother. Mm-hmm. And then you realize, oh my God, she's the head of the Communist Party. She is the mastermind behind this. Now, when we're talking about Lansbury, I want to say that when she was offered the role, as I said, Frankenheimer, according to Lansbury, Frankenheimer brought her the book while they were filming All Fall Down. Frankenheimer has a different viewpoint of it. But anyway, he wanted her from the beginning. And she said that she said, I've always had a problem playing downright rotten women. And she said she had to find her way into the character to be able to play this character. And she said the way into the character was the moment when Eleanor tells Raymond, i.e. Laurence Harvey, that she didn't know he was the one who was going to be chosen to be the killer. She just said, get me a killer. And the communists chose her son because they did it on purpose to bound him to her. So that is how Lansbury justified being able, she had to find a way into this character. She had to find something to identify with this woman, and she did that. The woman didn't know that it was going to be her own son. And she's also, I mean, we might as well talk about it right now, has incestuous feelings for her son. And there's a very famous kiss in the Manchurian Candidate in this final scene when she gives Shaw, Laurence Harvey, his instructions about the assassination, and she kisses him on the mouth.
Well, she kisses him on the forehead.
Yes,
and
exactly.
And then she gives him a kind of a little more tender kiss on the cheek, and then she goes full force in there.
Yes, exactly. Go full force. But Frankenheimer said, put your hands on both sides of his face when you make the kiss. Otherwise, this ain't gonna get past the production code. And it did. It's amazing. It's still an amazing scene because it gives you just enough to know. Now, in the book, she sleeps with him.
Yes.
In the film, it's implied. But, I mean, you get just enough so it's implied. But there's a lot of differences between the book and the movie and the timeline, which I don't think we want to go into because it would make this an incredibly long podcast. But I think it's amazing that Lansbury was able to find a way into this very disturbing character and not only make it seem real and believable, but give a ass-kicking performance.
Yeah, in the wrong hands, this would have looked like a caricature. And because she is just so cold and just so evil, but she was so believable in this role. It is hard. Like I said, it was hard for me to think of the roles. This was the woman that less than 10 years later was the star of Bedknobs and Broomsticks, for God's sakes.
Well, and Jessica Fletcher. I mean, come on.
The later black Jessica Fletcher. I mean,
America's aunt, America's grandmother. I mean, come on. I mean, it's really, she was an astoundingly talented woman. She also won 5 Tony Awards on Broadway. So this is a woman who, I think, and we talked a lot about Angela Lansbury when we talked about Death on the Nile and the depth of this incredible talent that she had. I mean, she could sing, she could dance, she could do drama, she could do comedy, she could do British, she could do, she could do anything at all. And I really feel like Frankenheimer was absolutely right. It was the perfect choice. And you know what? I also want to say, yes, 3 years older than Laurence Harvey. She didn't wear any aging makeup. They didn't age her. They didn't give her a hump.
No.
It's all projected in her demeanor. It's all projected in how she carries herself. It's all in her body language. And that's the other brilliant thing about Angela Lansbury. Yes, born at 45, stayed 45. But you believe this is Laurence Harvey's mother, even though she's 3 years. She is only 3 years older than he is.
Her hair helped. Her dress helped. But it would not have worked had she not carried herself that manner.
Yeah,
she just
absolutely.
was great.
Absolutely.
I've got to give you an idea of how horrible this woman is. This is from the movie. It's a quote, and it's by her son, and he's talking to Frank Sinatra's character, and he says, "My mother, Ben, is a terrible woman, a terrible, terrible woman. You know, Ben, it's a terrible thing to hate your mother, but I didn't always hate her. When I was a child, I only kind of disliked her." And it goes on from there. And no child could love his mother. He was under her spell. And not just while being hypnotized. No. She was narcissistic and controlled everything he did, from who he married, when he was going to marry, his careers, etc., etc., etc. As much as he hated her, he couldn't pull away from her. So to have him hypnotized and be even further under her control is just almost unnecessary.
It is. And I think this is a good point to talk about the man who plays Shaw, to talk about Laurence Harvey.
I don't know much of him, so I'm glad you're going to talk about him.
Well, he was a very interesting actor. He had a big career from the 50s on. His big break was in Room at the Top. First of all, he's a Lithuanian-born British stage and film actor. He made a splash in the film Room at the Top in 1959. He got an Oscar nomination. He followed that up right away. He became a Hollywood star in Butterfield 8 opposite Elizabeth Taylor in 1960. And Elizabeth Taylor adored him as she did. There's questions about his sexuality. And as God love Elizabeth Taylor, she loved her gay boyfriends.
As did Angela Lansbury.
But I mean, Elizabeth Taylor is, iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Elizabeth Taylor said when he died that he was one of the people I really loved in this world. He was part of the sun. There are stories that she tried to climb into his bed. He died of pancreatic cancer, and she tried to climb into his bed in the hospital to be with him, which she also did with Rock Hudson. So that's Elizabeth Taylor. Incredible life, incredible heart. But what the thing about Harvey is that he specialized in playing these kinds of roles. He specialized in playing remote, cold, and potentially dangerous characters. So he is perfect casting for Raymond Shaw. And Frankenheimer said that Harvey was perfect because Shaw is, in essence, a loathsome man. Sinatra says that. Sinatra says, after we started this podcast with that spiel that they've all been brainwashed to say about Shaw. And he's like, why am I saying that? I can't stand him. He's a horrible person. And Harvey could portray that. Harvey could portray a lonesome person, but he could still be likable.
And that was also one of the triggers that Sinatra had, that something is up.
Yeah, exactly. Because he's like, why am I saying this is what is the exact quote, Brad?
His exact quote, and everybody in the platoon was hypnotized to say this, is, Raymond Shaw is the kindest, bravest, warmest, most wonderful human being I've ever known in my life.
Yeah.
And when he has this realization that there's something wrong with that, he then says, it's not that Robert Shaw is hard to like, he's impossible to like.
Exactly. And Laurence Harvey has that to a T. He's loathsome, but there's also something very sad about him.
Yes.
And Harvey taps into that. And I remember I read one critic said of Laurence Harvey that he was a thin Bela Lugosi. He's lean and cruel and foreign as Dracula. And that's it. That's the thing about Laurence Harvey in almost all of his films. Certainly in this, certainly in Butterfield 8. He is lean and mean, but there is something about him which makes you feel for him. And I think you feel for Shaw in this movie. You have to.
There were moments that I hated him, but that was usually masked by the pain I had for him. I really was sad for this man.
It's
and the way he obviously was raised. So yeah, this evil character was created, or not evil, but basically a horrible person was created.
Yeah, exactly. He was created, and he was the perfect candidate. He was the perfect candidate for this because he was so beaten by his mother, that he's the perfect choice to become this assassin, to become this brainwashed assassin, brainwashed and dry cleaned, as they say. So there's one more star in this film, and I got to ask you, Brad, your ideas about this, because I'm asking myself as I'm watching this, why the hell is Janet Leigh in this film?
Well, I have asked myself that many, many times, because she serves, on the surface, she serves no purpose. It's like, what is this person? Why is she even in it? She doesn't move the story in any way. And the only reason I could see that she's in this, first of all, she looks gorgeous.
Oh, yeah. Well,
and
she was a beautiful woman.
Jamie Lee Curtis loves her mother in this film and said her mother is very proud of her role in this film.
She should be.
She does play it well. But again, why?
Why is she in it?
The only purpose I see that she had is you kept questioning, is she in on this?
Well, that's true.
Didn't you?
Yes. The way Axelrod, a brilliant screenwriter, as we said, Breakfast at Tiffany's, 7-Year Itch, the film, yes. And the way those scenes with Frank Sinatra are written, they're written with such nonsense when they ask if they're Arabic and they say things to each other, and it makes you wonder, what the fuck are they talking about? What the hell is going on here? And that's all part of the duplicity. That's all part of the mystery of this movie.
Well, and especially you have to add in how they met.
Yes.
He is nervous on this train because he's dealing with all this stuff going on in his head.
He's got the sweats.
Yeah, he's got the sweats. He's shaking. So he steps between the cars, the area where the wind gusts through. And she just comes out and is very forward, especially for 1962, and basically nearly seduces the man. Basically says, I want you, without saying I want you. And it's like, why would anybody do that? She doesn't even know the man. Shaky, sweaty man, what is attracting her to him?
Not only that.
So it adds to that.
Not only that, the next scene, she's dumped her fiancé. And then the next scene, they're living together. So you're like, what is wrong with this woman? This is such a 1960s. Yes. So Janet Leigh plays Eugenie Rose Chaney in this film. And the reason that she's in this film, and this is what Frankenheimer said, is she basically plays the girl, air quotes. Mm-hmm. Her role is purposely underwritten, and her primary reason to be in this film is to give Sinatra somebody to talk to. That's it.
I could see that.
And Sinatra needs somebody to talk to, so she's the girl. Back in the golden age of Hollywood, perfect example is 7-Year Itch. Marilyn Monroe does not have a name in the 7-Year Itch. She's called the girl. Same thing with Janet Leigh. At least they gave Janet Leigh a name in this. But she is, air quotes, the girl in this, because Frank Sinatra needs somebody to talk to. Somebody to relate to. Otherwise, it grounds him. It makes him human. It's a love interest, obviously. But here's a story. You mentioned Jamie Lee Curtis and how proud she was of her mother in this role, as she should be, because even though Janet Leigh has very little to play, she's very good. She was served with divorce papers from Tony Curtis on the first day of filming, and they filmed that train scene. So can you imagine that? It's like Mia Farrow and Frank Sinatra, ironically, getting divorce papers on the movie set. So she gets divorce papers from Tony Curtis, unbeknownst to her, when she's just about to film the first scene in this film. And she's wonderful. She's wonderful. But really, and she's third billed. She might even be second billed in this.
She's third.
She's third billed in this. She's third billed in this. And really, you're like, why is she? Who's she playing? Why is she in this? Yeah. But that's why.
So yeah, I was wondering if her character was in the novel at all, or if she had a much bigger role in the novel. And I don't know the answer to that because I didn't really. Let me talk about this because I always say this thing. I don't like comparing novels to the book or to the movies. I like to see what was changed, but I don't say this was a great novel, terrible movie, vice versa. You have to separate them.
You do.
You can say this was a terrible movie, but don't base it on the book. But there's another thing a lot of people get really upset about remakes. They're like, oh my God, Hollywood why are they always making remakes these days? Why can't they be more creative like they used to be? Remakes started from the very first reel. I mean, my God, how many times, some of those earliest films were made over and over and over again. Look how many times The Star is Born was made. So it is nothing new. So I don't mind remakes. However, I have not seen and have no desire to see the 2004 version of this with Denzel Washington because I love this movie so much.
Well, that's fair. There's a lot of movies I love, which I don't want to see the remake of. But you got Meryl Streep playing the Angela Lansbury role. So, hello. And Jonathan Demme directed it. And Jonathan Demme is a great director. But I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you about that. I saw it when it came out, and I have no desire to see it again. Because this...
To me, Denzel is hit or miss because, well, I first saw him watching St. Elsewhere, and I loved and adored the man for anything but his acting. But I just liked looking at him. I'm like, why does he have a bigger role in this show? Because they rarely did anything with him. But I've seen him do great roles, and I've seen him like, oh, this is really bad. So
yeah,
the numbers on Rotten Tomatoes are not great for the film. They're not horrible.
I mean, I prefer this, obviously. I mean, the cast alone and... Hello, the director, Frankenheimer. I mean, this man, he does so many things in this film which are just so startling. He began as a TV director, like so many of them did, and actually William Friedkin, who we've talked about before in Boys in the Band, and he also directed The French Connection. I mean, we know who William Friedkin is. He called Frankenheimer the greatest director of his generation. Now, that's pretty astounding. And Frankenheimer developed his skills directing these live dramatic television specials, which he brings to this film. This film has a very documentary-like feel. It's very immediate. You feel like it's now. It doesn't seem 1962 to me, other than the fashions and the cars. It's very immediate is the word. And that's Frankenheimer's style. And he achieved this by doing these live television dramas when everything was live. It was happening now. Yeah. And that's why this film is like this. But he does so many amazing things in this film. We talked about the 360 shot of brainwashing. That camera does not stop. It goes all the way around from subjective viewpoint to objective viewpoint. He uses, and we talked about this in The Little Foxes, he uses 18 millimeter lenses for deep focus. There is a lot of deep focus in this film. And basically what that means, to remind people, deep focus is when the background and the middle ground and the foreground are all in sharp focus. You can see everything. It's a storytelling technique. If I can see what's happening in the foreground and the background, you've just given me twice as much information as if it were a regular shot, and I couldn't see what was going on in the background. That's why he does it. And frequently in the Manchurian Candidate, you get a really large head in the foreground and a smaller one in the background, and they're talking to each other. And you can see exactly the reactions they both have. Frankenheimer also, most of the scenes in the Manchurian Candidate are long scenes. They are 2 shots mostly. And that's a skilled actor can do a long shot, can do a long take, a long shot. But here's the thing. Sinatra is very famous for only doing 1 take. And Frankenheimer said this was not out of a sense of entitlement. Sinatra would leave sets when a director asked for a second take. He's like, no, I did it. It's done. Frankenheimer said it wasn't out of a sense of entitlement. He just knew that his first take was always the best take. Mm-hmm. And there's a very famous story about the deprogramming scene in the Manchurian Candidate. Do you know that story about Frank Sinatra and Laurence Harvey and the camera being out of focus?
There's actually not just that scene. There's another scene, 1 or 2 other scenes where people believe that it was done for artistic purposes when it was not.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe that's where you're going.
Yes. Do you want to tell that?
Yeah, there were 2. The scene Tony's talking about is Frank Sinatra's out of focus in this important scene. And people thought, oh, this was an artistic choice by Frankenheimer. And I've seen interviews with Frankenheimer or read interviews with Frankenheimer. He's like, no, they weren't artistic choices. Sinatra just said it's a 1-take thing. So
well, yeah.
We left it in.
Here's what happened. So it's the scene in the hotel room outside of Madison Square Garden. And it's the deprogramming scene. It's where Frank Sinatra comes with the deck of cards that are all the Queen of Diamonds to deprogram Shaw from the brainwashing. And what happened was that when they were filming Sinatra's scene, something happened to the assistant cameraman, the camera operator, and it was out of focus, slightly out of focus. And Raymond Shaw, Laurence Harvey on the reverse scene is in sharp focus. And when Frankenheimer shot it, he thought, oh my God, this is great. Sinatra's brilliant. 1 take, brilliant. And then they developed it and saw it the next day. And he's like, oh shit, he's out of focus. I'm going to have to tell Frank Sinatra, we have to do this again. He said it was the longest walk in his life to walk to Frank Sinatra's dressing room and tell him we have to reshoot this very difficult, tense scene that Sinatra got on the first take. So they tried. They did it, I think, about 10 or 11 times over a series of days. And Sinatra just could not get it up again. He just couldn't. He was right. He knew he could do the first take was his best take. So Frankenheimer thought, fuck it. I'm going to leave the shot in slightly out of focus and we'll just deal with it because it's a better acting take. It's a better performance. And then when the film was released, the critics went, oh, isn't Frankenheimer brilliant? Because he's reflecting Shaw's viewpoint. He's reflecting the viewpoint of a man who has been brainwashed. It's his point of view. So Sinatra's out of focus, but Raymond Shaw's in deep focus. And he's like, no, it wasn't an artistic choice at all. The cameraman screwed up. But there you go. That's one of the genius things about Frankenheimer is he recognized that. And later on, it became a legend for absolutely no reason at all.
Yeah, it's awesome. That's one thing that always drove me crazy when I took English and literature is the amount of times that they would go into, this was an artistic choice by the author. They were trying to make this kind of statement. I'm like, well, maybe they were just trying to tell a story. I got in trouble several times.
Oh, really? Yeah, I know. People always have a story to tell. People always have a. So I think that another one of my favorite scenes, and I think one very famous scene in this film, is one of the things. I mean, think about this for a minute. McCarthy was only 10 years before. The blacklist was still around. It had been broken by Spartacus in a way, but it was still around. So it was a very dangerous thing to do this obvious take on McCarthy. And one of the things McCarthy used to do, was famous for, was just spouting out numbers of communists. There are 94 communists in Senate. There are 100. The number would always change. Yeah. And that's what Senator Iselin does. And there's a scene in The Manchurian Candidate in this film where he says to Angela Lansbury, please just, because he's totally her whipping boy. I mean, she is no doubt who wears the pants in this relationship. And James Gregory's so funny. And he's like, just give me a number. I just need a number to stick to. And as he's saying it, he has a ketchup bottle in his hand. And he's hitting the back of the ketchup bottle to put ketchup on his steak. And she looks at it, ketchup bottle, and then the next shot, it cuts, and he says, there are 57 communists.
And I didn't catch that the first, because I just watched this a couple of times. I didn't catch that the first time. And the second time was, how did I miss that?
It's the Heinz bottle, 57.
Yes.
This is why this film, and we've talked about this, I say this all the time, this film is a satire. You know, Condon viewed his book as a satire. Mm-hmm. Frankenheimer approaches this just like Lumet approached Network, as a satire. That's why there's the narration. That's why we have scenes like the Heinz 57, because the humor makes it all the more horrific. And I feel like that's why this film is it's still so gut-wrenching today, because we see the humor, but we know the reality of what's happening in the world today.
And that's what I wanted to bring up. This movie came out in 1962. Mm-hmm. 40 years later, the remake came out, and they're political thrillers. So how can a political thriller in 1962 apply to 2004? Well, I'll tell you it applies to today, and I want to point this out by giving at least 3 lines from this film. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to get deep into politics, but I think everybody will connect. The first one is, this line's from the film, the weak must be led, the strong must be watched. Then the next 2 really hit the home. There is nothing so absurd that it cannot be believed as truth. Mm. And the third one, the biggie for me, is the greater the lie, the more likely it is to be believed.
Oh, boy, is that true.
Tell me none of this. No, I don't think any of that plays today.
Not at all. Not at all. Not in the age of alternative facts and truthisms. And it's really kind of frightening that we deal with Manchurian candidates today. But in 1962, you know, it was dealing with communism, and it's amazing. It's amazing.
I forgot to mention, I told you there were 2 things that I remembered wrong in this film. The first is that they showed right up front that this was a mind control situation. The second one is, I remembered in the film, remember, this was all very blurry, so I didn't remember details. I remembered the film that the plot succeeded. What I also remember is that the Shaw character became president at the end, because I thought this took place much longer after the war. So
you got it totally wrong.
I did get it totally wrong, and I'm glad, because it made it much more interesting to me, because it was like watching it for the first time. So it is funny how your brain can really mess things up, and I like the way it was done.
Yeah,
it was still a surprise ending. There were lots of twists and turns and surprises. As I said, Janet Leigh, you knew there were moments where you're like, this woman is part of this conspiracy. And she really served no other purpose than that, other than to bounce his ideas off of, which I know is done frequently, and it's done well in this.
Yeah. So, and it's, to kind of put it in the context, you usually do this. You usually talk about films that were out this same year.
Yeah, I can give them to you. And this movie was number 16 that year. As we said, it didn't do great financially. Mm-hmm. The total to today is great because how well it's done since then. So the top films of 1962, the first is The Longest Day. The second is Laurence of Arabia. The third is In Search of Castaways, which I don't even know if I've ever heard of that film. Number 4 is That Touch of Mink, and number 5 is The Music Man, which I used to love as a musical, and lately I've watched it a couple times. I'm like, this isn't really all that good, though I love Shirley Jones.
Yeah.
Now, other memorable films that I think people will remember more than those top 5, or some of them will, we had To Kill a Mockingbird, A Mutiny on the Bounty, Lolita, Days of Wine and Roses, which we've discussed doing on the show. Mm-hmm. And one we did discuss on the show is Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Right.
So that give you a frame of reference of what the big films were that year.
Well, yeah. And as I said in our Whatever Happened to Baby Jane episode, there are arguments that 1962 is Hollywood's greatest year, not 1939, because of the fact that we had Laurence of Arabia and The Manchurian Candidate and Baby Jane and To Kill a Mockingbird. And I mean, so Long Day's Journey into Night, another one that was 62. So yeah, it was a astounding year for film. And that's an argument that I lean more towards some days. I mean, I love 1939, God knows, but wow, these films are amazing. And Lansbury, again, as we said, was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for this. The film also got an Oscar nomination for Best Film Editing, both lost. Lansbury lost to Patty Duke. Also nominated that year were Mary Badham for To Kill a Mockingbird, Shirley Knight for Sweet Bird of Youth, Thelma Ritter for Birdman of Alcatraz. Mm-hmm. So these are all great performances. I'm not going to take an Oscar away from Patty Duke in The Miracle Worker, but God, Lansbury did win National Board of Review Award, and also for this and for All Fall Down. So at least she got something for this, and she won a Golden Globe for this. So
I knew she won a Golden Globe. I wasn't sure if it was this film.
Yes, so that's at least something for her. But I mean, and she said this too, when the film was but was reissued in 88 and kind of became this moment in our culture when this film was re-released. She said she was so grateful that happened because she felt it was the best work she'd ever done. She felt it was the best work Sinatra ever did, which I agree with her. She felt it was the best work Laurence Harvey ever did, which I also agree with her. And also, I mean, Frankenheimer, he had some other big films, but this is not to this level. I mean, this is a mythic film. He did 7 Days in May. He did Grand Prix. He did a wonderful film called Seconds, which I would love to talk about sometime, with Rock Hudson, which is another film very similar to this. It's got that same kind of documentary style. But how do you argue with a Manchurian Candidate? I mean, this is a crowning achievement. So thank God it was reissued, and it had its moment, and it's now in the pantheon of great films.
I'm amazed how many people don't know about this film. I kind of said the same thing about What's Up, Doc, and you were astonished that I would say that.
I am astonished.
But I think among the general populace, and I could be wrong, people think that 2004 was the version. And,
I don't like that at all.
No, because this movie, I watched it and I said, no, like I said, all I remembered was I loved it. And when it ended, I'm like, I remember why. This is just astounding.
I think a lot of people are afraid of this film. I think they don't really understand what it's about. It seems, I mean, the title alone is daunting, because what is a Manchurian Candidate? Well, we just told you. And we just told you what the film is. So by all means, if you haven't seen it, God bless you. We just told you the whole film. Go watch it, because there's a lot of things we didn't cover, and it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yep. Before we go, let me tell you how it did in Rotten Tomatoes. The critic score was 97%, so nearly 100. That's not very often that happens. And the audience score was still fabulous. It was a 90%. So, yeah, this is a great film. Obviously, the critics love it. The audiences love it. And Tony and I love it. So pull it up again.
Absolutely, Brad.
One more thing before we go. If this is your first time, or maybe even your second time listening to this podcast, we're not expecting you to do a review. We'll get you it would be great if you did.
Yeah.
But get to know us a little better. But if nothing else, subscribe. However, those of you that listen to us almost every week, which we know it should be every week, but we're reality here. Once again, if you listen this long, it means you probably enjoyed the show. Go give us a review. We love 5 stars, but we'll take anything.
Well, no, we won't. We don't want a 1 star. Come on.
Well, I got to tell you, our first 4 star, Tony's like, I'm really let down by that 4 star. I said, Tony, wait till we get a 1 star. Eventually it's going to happen.
We're working our asses off up here.
But you that are listening right now, don't give us the 1 star.
No, we're working our asses off. Well, that was our final film for our Mother's May celebration. I think we did a good job. I think we really ran the gamut of mothers in this month. And thanks everybody for listening and indulging us in our little Mother's May celebration. Now we're back to our regularly scheduled programming, although it is June, so there might be a couple surprises coming up in June for Pride Month.
One surprise is that Tony gave me 2 movies to choose in a row, which I got to tell you, I usually have to fight for my films.
Astounding.
These were pretty easy. Thank you for allowing me this one. And next week, all I'm going to say is, the reason I wanted to do the film is because I rewatched the film, and it was an actress that she blew me away. Right. And I think she's adored by almost everyone.
Right. No, I agree with you. And yes, I did give you the power, Brad, but don't turn into a Manchurian Candidate And don't bastardize the power I gave you. No, we got some good stuff coming up. So, well, is there anything else we want to say about the Manchurian Candidate and this phenomenal cast of people who brought it together and the director who made it possible?
No, I think we said it all. Like I said, the most important thing is go watch it again.
Well, I guess there's only one thing left to say. But let's not say goodbye, Brad. Let's say, cheerio, governor!
Well, thanks for the laugh, but no, let's say goodbye.
All right.
That's all, folks.